This video is brought to you by Karl Marx. Okay, can you see that? Hi, can you see that? I'm just gonna make sure, what I've written, right? Right? You can see that, right? This? I wrote this. Me. I wrote this. Me. I wrote it. I came up with it. Okay, so if Elon wants to steal this joke, this tweet, well, it's not a tweet. It's a saying. It's a saying that I came up with, and if Elon wants to steal that, he has to go through me. Right? Okay, you got that? You listen, you pay attention now. I wrote this. I came up with this, and I'm gonna trademark it right now. Is this the marker that works? Which one? I did that. I did that, and I'm also gonna do that. And, I don't know any other symbols. I did that. All of that. Me. I did that. I don't know how. These are all the symbols I know. Hi. I know we joke about Elon Musk and his ongoing reign, his absolute inability to manage a social media company. Some place him on a pedestal for being this revolutionary who pioneered luxury electric cars and a visionary who's gonna put human civilization in space. There are a lot of videos that debunk his credibility, which I'm gonna link in the description below for those interested. I think most of us know, and by us I mean people that care about democracy and equal rights, that as long as billionaires or extremely wealthy people exist, there will be unfair means that they can profit from, leading to issues such as working class people not having proper income, healthcare, housing, education, good food, or just about any necessity resourceful to give a person a good life. Lack of access causes people to fall back in society and leaves them underprivileged. Because of that, they can't afford education, which leaves them with fewer job opportunities, forcing them into working class jobs where they are essentially trapped in a cycle that works against them. It's a tale as old as time. If you've been on Twitter recently, you've seen the word free speech thrown around a lot. The right is talking about how there's finally freedom of speech thanks to Elon Musk, and the left is saying that Elon Musk is a threat to free speech. Now let me tell you a secret. When we talk about equal rights and the freedom of speech, we are assuming that we function in a free society. A democracy, mind you, which is characterized by the slogan, power to the people. We wouldn't be having these discussions in countries such as North Korea, Saudi Arabia, or China. Although not the biggest democracy on the basis of population, America's vast landmass wins the prize for being the biggest democratic country, and the Constitution openly declares that all men are created equal. You and I both probably know a lot of people who would disagree with that sentiment, although not necessarily with the idea of democracy. People are famously known to be exclusionary. We tend to be racist, classist, homophobic, transphobic, misogynist, xenophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic. You get the point. Human beings have this elitist belief that certain groups of people are better than others. Kind of like how Americans love patting themselves on the back for being Americans. We're the best country in the world. We're number one. Free speech. Yeehaw. People don't take a second to think, can we make those judgments? Are some countries better than others? Should we confine and label ourselves as Americans, Canadians, Brits, Australians, or Indians when history has proven that we all originated from the same place and have only been divided due to some power-hungry conquerors and a continental drift we had no control over? I know I'm starting to lose some of you right now because it's starting to sound like a MatPat video at this point, but my point is that with America and most democratic countries, sure, the slogan might be all men are created equal, but in practice, it's all men are created equal, but not some of them. Okay there. That should fix the problem. I noticed it was irritating for me to look at the camera because of my glasses, and I realized that it was probably hard for you to look at me because of my glasses. So I took them off, and I'm gonna be blind for the rest of the video, so bear with me, and let's do this. If you as a social group have had a history of disenfranchisement, then it starts to show in your present. For instance, queer people in all democracies, non-whites in white-dominated democracies, the minorities belonging to scheduled castes and tribes in India. Hell, if we learned anything from the Me Too movement, it was that women, the gender with a history of oppression all throughout the world, were still suffering from systematic ramifications of disenfranchisement, even though they technically had equal rights at this point. It showed that patriarchy as a concept had not been dismantled. We still lived in a patriarchal society because men had and continue to have so much power over women. Women are considered equal in theory. They're allowed to vote, they can even have jobs if they want to, they can choose not to get married or not be mothers, although that doesn't mean we're not going to shame them for choosing that. But they are free now because we don't keep them at home until they hit puberty and sell them off to some pedo in exchange for land. No, now we send them to school and buy them nice clothes and educate them and say that they need to be thin and pretty, and if it doesn't come naturally, they should buy goods and services, which are essentially chemicals and poison that they need to put on their face, not only in order to fit into society, but to be accepted. It goes without saying that women who aren't white in Western countries are more oppressed because they're doubly minorities, non-white, and women. We need to apply the same logic to all groups of people. African Americans are still facing the repercussions of slavery and Jim Crow laws because oppression prevented them from operating in a society, and after they were emancipated, it wasn't like they were welcomed or given any positions in society. They had to start from scratch, when white people had not only been functioning in said society, but also designed it specifically to be suitable for them. Men have designed society so that they always come out on top. The same is for white people. After the slaves were emancipated, the whites never really went, okay, you can take a look at this and see if you want to make any changes. They were basically like, ugh, fine, you can win because so many people have died. Here, you can have your freedom. They weren't even happy that the slaves were free. They would have preferred to keep it that way, much less welcome them and integrate them to be a part of the society. I'm by no means saying that I'm making a unique or very controversial point. This is something that underprivileged people have been talking about forever. But the funny thing is, whenever I see someone complaining about free speech, it's a cis white heterosexual male who's also a billionaire. If not a billionaire, then a privileged white man with a huge fan following. Two things I've established are that you can't possibly be a billionaire ethically because you function in a system that exploits your workers who are underpaid and therefore underprivileged, making you richer, and you also probably don't pay your taxes and aren't really taxed proportionately to begin with. Second, your privilege means you have a head start when it comes to functioning in the society that was specifically designed to be ideal for you, which is why so many popular YouTubers, American or otherwise, are white. Even most YouTube channels that discuss leftist ideology or identity politics and the importance of inclusivity and integration are predominantly white. You cannot deny that white privilege does not factor into that. That's just fact. White people are more likely to listen to a white person talk about racial issues than hear a black person out. They may essentially agree with ideologies that are focused on integration and equality, but it's more comforting, at least initially, when it's not coming directly from a black person. Because then it's a threat. Because then you're personally attacking them. You're canceling them. You were free centuries ago and are using them as an excuse for doing drugs and being a criminal. These are actual narratives that white people perpetrate till this day. They say that there's no free speech, and I agree. I don't think there is free speech, not when we're following pre-existing systems of power, because we get to hear these white people moan about not having rights, or that they can't say racial slurs, or be racist to their non-white coworkers without their actions not having consequences. If you ask the disenfranchised, you'll know that there never really has been free speech. When the Me Too movement happened, we learned that several men abused their power over women, who weren't allowed to talk about it because the system was designed to work against them. Same thing with Stop Asian Hate and Black Lives Matter. These people have been trying to function in a system that works against them and doesn't favor them. Till date, several racial crimes take place, harassment and abuse that goes unreported or ignored because the system is designed to work against individuals who do not fall into a specific category. They're right, there isn't free speech. These people in power, they do what they always do. They make themselves the victim. They say, oh well, listen, what am I supposed to do? Let an aggressive black man exercise his power over me? When there is no black man at all. He's entirely made up. They use a straw man argument and rile people up. They condition you to associate to entirely dissimilar things, and when you start questioning their conditioning and behaviors, they once again become the victims and say, hey, there's no free speech anymore because they are threatened by the possibility of actual equality, actual freedom of speech. They're afraid that these systems that favor them will cease to exist and new systems that are ideal for everybody will be implemented in their stead. And this will eventually lead to their irrelevancy. Now you tell me that this isn't true, that this isn't the same world you're living in, and that we do have free speech, and that we have equal rights and equal opportunities, no matter what class, race, gender, sexuality, or religion we belong to. I'd love to live in the world you're living in, but it sure doesn't seem like that to me. To me, the situation is extremely bleak. I think democracy as we know it is at stake. With what's happening in the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, China, North Korea, and Afghanistan, we're at the brink of what could be a nuclear war, which is going to be devastating no matter what country you're from. England, yeah, good job placing an inbred family of imperial racists on a pedestal, not to mention alleged sex offenders.
Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming? Yes.
Unbecoming. He was a sex offender.
America, the self-crowned epicenter of globalization, has taken away a woman's right to her body, barely avoided the second presidential term of a billionaire whose dire leadership led to millions of people losing their jobs, their housing, and their lives. Additionally, it added fuel to the fire and marginalized the oppressed social groups even more. You had a surge in the popularity of right-wing commentators such as Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Alex Jones, Tim Pool, Matt Walsh, and a billion other people who are just as privileged and revolting. Blair White, a trans YouTuber, started framing herself as one of the good ones. It's just bizarre to me that you want to be part of a group that's so exclusionary that they're doing everything in their power to take away the rights of people like you. People who feel that the gender they were assigned at birth is not their actual gender, and like you, they would like to transition and be free to be their real selves. I would think that you would try and make the process easier for them, to make it a safer world, to prevent the impending assault and harassment that they have to endure because, again, society isn't designed to benefit them. Nope, Blair seems to be doing everything in her power to prevent trans people from having any rights because she's the only good one and all other trans people are cringe. It's the hard truth that society isn't designed with underprivileged, working-class, colored, pansexual, trans people in mind. It is so hard for people like that to work in societies and make a name for themselves that you never hear such stories. And how can they have equal opportunities or a platform to talk about themselves, the issues that they're facing, and the problems that they go through to function in this so-called democracy? If we cared about free speech, we would hear them out and listen to them just as much as we listen to privileged white men. That isn't true though, is it? We haven't evolved enough to hear everybody out. You only want to hear specific types of people. Usually people that don't challenge your views and fit the description of what a respectable individual is for you, which obviously has a lot to do with your upbringing. Most of us were raised bigots, but I guess eventually you gotta choose which train you want to hop on. The train that actually provides people with equal opportunities, or the pre-existing ones that benefit only a specific set of people. If you've noticed, people in power are threatened by even the slightest action that could question, let alone displace, their power. This is why there are All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter campaigns. This is why they overthrew Roe v. Wade so they can exercise control over women. And this is why they continue to marginalize anyone who isn't heterosexual, cisgendered, upper middle class, and white. You'll observe if this video gains any traction, which I doubt it will. It'll most definitely be subject to criticism from people who fit into this very specific privileged category. And they'll complain about how I'm woke and I'm silencing them and I'm wrong for some reason. I'm not saying that I can't be wrong. I mean, obviously I can be wrong. I believe vampires were real until I was 11. But if you are a cis-het white man finding fault with me, maybe evaluate how many times you've seen a white person with a bad opinion and let them get away with it. I think criticism is very important. The Socratic dialogue is how a civilization grows. I just want everyone to have a level playing field. Right-wing commentators who hate the woke mob all tend to be white, male, cis, and straight. Strangely, all of them have the same opinions, that they are somehow the victims now because of the scary Antifa woke mob who wants to cause chaos and is a threat to democracy. In all these narratives, they are disenfranchised. They are being oppressed. They're not allowed to express themselves because cancel culture is out to get them. I'm not saying that cancel culture is good or bad, but if you want an in-depth analysis of what cancel culture means to democracy, I don't know, watch the ContraPoints video. It goes into way more detail and has better production design and is way too good to be available for free on YouTube. Natalie's channel in general is very informative and, more importantly, it provides a perspective that's rare on YouTube. A trans woman trying to educate people about gender identity, politics, and philosophy. I'm just saying that generally what these people call canceling is someone being held accountable for something wrong that they did, which, might I remind you, rarely happens, because again, power is being held in the hands of a few. Or they'll slap woke on some random lame cringe thing, or some pseudo-intellectual dismantles the idea of the left or the woke by saying things like postmodernism is a threat to society as we know it because it wants to rebuild the existing power structures, and that will result in anarchy. Yes, that was my Jordan Peterson impression. Can we move past it? And just when you thought the discourse couldn't get any worse, the most privileged, whitest, straightest, and cisest man bought the biggest social media network there was. I don't know where to begin when it comes to understanding Elon Musk and his war on free speech. Musk has had a controversial social media presence way before he bought Twitter. When you ask people what he's known for apart from Tesla and SpaceX, they probably say his tweets where he posts stolen memes and has expressed that crediting the original meme author is bad for some reason. His issue with crediting only exists with memes, by the way. Otherwise, he loves giving people credit for what they've done. He spent years posting dad joke memes to win over an audience of supporters who would defend his actions no matter how insane they were, and also call him the smartest man alive, while giving him credit for founding the luxury electric car company and being an essential engineer for the space exploration company, believing that he is the messiah, a pioneer, and the savior of humanity, the man who will colonize Mars. I can't believe I have to say this, but colonization is not morally permissible. We're talking about wiping out pre-existing civilizations or forcing them to recognize ours as the superior one. Colonizers are ruthless egomaniacs who devastate cultures. But I wouldn't expect a white man raised in apartheid South Africa to know anything about that. People make claims like male privilege is a myth, and then when they are criticized for it, they argue that they're being silenced and oppressed, which, no, just because someone holds you accountable for something you did or tries to explain that what you said could be wrong, doesn't mean that you're being oppressed. That is discourse, which is essential to a healthy society. Did we learn nothing from Socrates? Speaking of a polarizing figure who is also often considered the smartest man alive, let's talk about Socrates. Socrates remains one of the most influential figures in philosophy, despite having never written anything himself. His disciple Plato, who has never achieved anything in his life and made no name for himself and vanished from the plane of existence without ever having taught anything to anyone, recorded his master's teachings, which went on to influence philosophy, morals, and ethics. Although we can speak endlessly about Socrates and his contributions to human civilization, this video is long enough as it is, so let's talk about Socratic dialogue. I didn't want to rip off a definition of what Socratic dialogue is from the internet, so I wrote a dialogue to better illustrate what it means. Here goes. Cats or dogs? I think that cats are better than dogs. Why do you think that? Because they have whiskers. And they meow. So, is the nature of what makes something better judged by whether or not something has whiskers and meows? Are these the only characteristic attributes that make a particular entity superior to something else? I guess not. Cats don't bark, so you don't really have to worry about that. And they mostly mind their own business and poop and pee in the kitty litter. It's not really that difficult to have them as pets. There are a lot of attributes we can consider. Okay, well, if I encouraged you to argue your case against cats and perhaps think of the positive attributes that dogs contain, what then? Well, dogs can be trained to fetch items, play catch, and listen to certain commands. They can be taken out on walks. They can be useful in fighting crime. Some of these things cats can do. Dogs are also known to be more affectionate than cats. So you do recognize that there is intrinsic value in both species? Yes. Is there something that both of these species have in common? Well, yes, they're both fluffy and cute. When domesticated, they generally provide comfort to their owner, and petting them is also a relieving activity to most people. So considering how you mentioned that both these species have value and have things in common, how do you judge which one is better or worse when there are arguments to be made on both sides? I suppose it's subjective and differs from person to person based on their preferences. They can choose which one they prefer based on the general attributes associated with each animal. Alright, perhaps that debate boils down to comparisons between the two. Although, we do need to discuss how these attributes are decided and how we cannot generalize the attributes of an entire species. That was a very surface-level demonstration of the power of the Socratic debate, where you present a point and then a counterpoint to either prove or disprove the presented notion. It can be quite effective when both parties are willing to converse, listen to each other discuss, and are open to understanding different perspectives. Socrates intended these methods to be useful in finding solutions to social, moral, and other problems. Let's not forget that Socrates was sentenced to death for his ideas. That's what happens when there is no free speech. I mean, that's the extreme end. Free speech is entirely dependent on which country you live in most Western countries, people aren't sent to prison for saying things. For instance, any well-adjusted adult would know better than to publicly express attraction to an underage person. And that's why when a person does that, people cancel them or label them problematic. Which in of itself doesn't sound harmful, it simply sounds like some people disagree or are not comfortable with the message that these individuals are sending, so they would prefer not to engage with their content. The reason we have so much variety and options for what we choose to engage in is inherently a good thing. Now, more than ever, there is something for everyone. There are a lot of creators or people that you choose not to engage with in life, not just because they don't have similar interests or opinions as you do, but because it's just too much. I don't really watch any Mr. Beast videos. There's no concrete reason. As of now, I don't have an opinion about him. I don't know him as an individual or his stance on anything. I don't think I would find his videos entertaining, so I don't engage with him as a creator. But there are a lot of people that would disagree with me or feel some other way. They're not wrong, and neither am I. We could have a Socratic debate on whether or not I should watch Mr. Beast, but you see, I don't want to do that. I think there is a discussion to be had about the amount of power and influence he wields and how there isn't really anyone moderating his rhetoric. He doesn't have to go through any barriers to get his message across, and that can be an obstacle to free speech. We'll elaborate on that later. There's also Ernest Cline. I'm not sure I've met anyone who has unironically enjoyed his work, but he got a Spielberg adaptation, so there must be someone. I don't enjoy his work, I think it's laughably bad, but I'm not opposed to it existing because there are discussions to be had on it. We could discuss, for instance, how bad it is. I feel the same way about Dan Brown, and I could go on. I will give you this, the Socratic debate can get very nuanced when you're arguing with yourself about whether or not you should rewatch Rosemary's Baby, because there are a lot of reasons why you shouldn't see it. But it's just such a good movie. I'm not saying that you can find the solution to everything by implementing the Socratic argument. That's not possible, and it's far from easy. It is very difficult, and you might not even reach a conclusion, but it's important that you have one. Because if you actively challenge your views and you continue to have the same views, the action makes your views stronger. If you challenge your views and the action alters your views, you're not in the wrong either. You've just seen things through a different perspective. We need to acknowledge that a variety of factors go into informing a person's point of view. When you come out on the internet and set up ground rules stating what's right and what's wrong, you're setting yourself up for failure because it's not long before this niche community that you've carved out is going to turn on you. And you don't know when you stop making the rules and the rules start dictating you. Take Abby Shapiro, sister of Ben Shapiro, who makes videos about the importance of dressing modestly. And she's garnered a fan base which I'm assuming consists mostly of conservative moms who also force their teen daughters to watch her content. Like I said, she's setting herself up for failure because of these narrow constraints about modesty. She never really provides a holistic definition of what modesty means, so you're kind of left to assume that modesty means whatever you want it to mean. Or that you wear a turtleneck, a blazer, a pantsuit, a calf-length skirt all at once, because who gets to define what constitutes as fashionable modest clothing and what doesn't? And that's why when she posts pictures of herself in civilian clothing, you get people saying things like,
"I thought you said a real woman can't show their shoulders. Abby, that's an awfully form-fitting top. It isn't modest at all. Above knees, 2 shoulders, 3 shoulders, 4 shorts are tight and above knees. Modesty is relative, I guess. So it's okay. The tops are too skin tight. Those new generations of modest influencers are still trying to cater to secular. Culture disappointing, the back cut out, not modest enough. If she was really about modesty, she'd known none of these looks are actually modest. Trust me, I know it. This chick throwing her modesty at everyone, which she's bopping.
So, are they in the wrong for expecting her to uphold the same level of modesty that she's been preaching? Or would ignoring this act of blatant hypocrisy be the right thing to do? Because at the end of the day, these microaggressions didn't dictate the majority of Abby Shapiro's fanbase. She's still doing fine, making harmful content. I hope we can all agree that a person on the side of free speech would say that people can dress up however they want, and then we trust them to be smart enough to make decisions based on their own interpretation. And if needed, we specify by asking people to dress according to a code. You don't show up to a business meeting wearing pajamas unless you're specifically asked to. And the same way, you don't wear a tuxedo to a pajama party unless you're a moron. Who decides you're a moron? Me. I'm the judge. What I mean to say is that the rules on Abby's channel are dictated by Abby. She's an influencer with a considerable following, and the message that she puts across matters because so many people are affected by her ideas. The reason it's even more alarming is because her audience consists of young, impressionable girls. Kids are still developing, and if your harmful rhetoric gets in through their skull as absolute truth, they get conditioned, and it's hard to persuade them to think differently. Not that persuasion is the intention, but anybody that holds a particular ideal should be able to express their logic behind it and how they came to that conclusion. I might even go ahead and say that if you haven't explored other perspectives, at least at the thought level, before deciding that the one you have is the definitive one, then either your beliefs are fragile or your understanding of them are. Like I said, I cannot highlight the existence of nuance in these arguments because I'm not saying influencers are good or bad, because as a person who has spent most of my childhood and adulthood on YouTube, influencer rhetoric is a powerful tool. My conditioning could have caused me to go either way: a red-pilled femcel, which as of now I am not, or a blue-pilled femcel. Those were my only two options. Throw away the nuance. But it's so enticing as a 12-year-old to discover a new YouTuber who likes the same anime that you're currently into, and you start watching their videos and you're like, I don't mind getting on this train, and you either stay on that train and get groomed by their content and equate your belief system with theirs, or you get off because you're unsettled by the message that they're sending. As you can probably tell, I'm drawing from personal experiences. For a very brief period of time, emphasis on very brief, I was a 12-year-old who watched Onision videos. There was a time, and I'm not proud of it. It lasted less than 3 weeks, but it happened. I found out he liked Death Note, which was the defining factor of my life and my only personality trait for that year. I started watching his videos and I was trying to navigate the tone, whether he was being funny, serious, or sarcastic, and honestly, I never seemed to get it with him, but I kept watching for about a week because he liked Death Note and punk rock, and he was edgy, and I liked that. And I saw that more and more of his content was based on him ranking pictures of girls in his fanbase, which prompted my vanity to wonder what he'll think about my pictures. But I've always had this fear that has kept me from uploading my personal information, including my pictures, to the internet. So I didn't do that, thank God. And yeah, eventually I just started getting creeped out by the guy, so I stopped watching him, which is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, because if I had gone down that rabbit hole, I probably would have been so conditioned that I'd be willing to rationalize a lot of his actions. The same with Shane Dawson. If you were on YouTube as much as I was between 2012 and present date, oh my god, it's been more than 10 years. Shane Dawson is a creator that's just impossible to miss. I think the first video I saw was his Wrecking Ball parody, and I was a preteen who only watched Smosh and the Key of Awesome, which is similar in that it can be edgy, gross, and vulgar. It generally attempted to provide something more than that, whereas Dawson's content was just that. Honestly, even in hindsight, it's one of the most disturbing videos I've seen. Even though I didn't really see anything else from Dawson, he started popping up quite a lot in other channels that I used to watch. The Fine Brothers, Watch His Live and stuff, if you know, you know. And channels of a lot of other YouTubers who were relevant at the time. I think I started hearing about him after the blackface controversy, the OG apology video. Since I wasn't raised in the West, I had no education about blackface before this, so this was my introduction, which is a darkly comical thing to say. How did you find out about this hate crime? Shane Dawson. If you haven't heard his apology in a while, you should go listen to it and put yourself in the shoes of a child who has no clear concept of racism, because he downplays his actions so much and just gives the stupidest excuses to explain why his apology is so poorly worded. There's a word for this. It's called manipulation. One would argue that all rhetoric in one form or another manipulates an individual, which is true. But again, it's a lot more nuanced than that. It exists to varying degrees and can be conscious or unconscious. It also depends on the audience the rhetoric is intended for. With this video, I'd be surprised if it makes to 100 views, but it's obvious that I'm trying to persuade you to think differently. Or question your beliefs, which is a form of manipulation. I am attempting to influence your thoughts. The same can be said about a lot of YouTubers who do it better. ContraPoints, PhilosophyTube, and H-Bomber Guy, to just name a few. College professors, writers, anybody who engages in rhetoric actually is guilty of this. The difference between college professors and influencers, a sentence I did not think I'd have to say, is largely that generally what a professor says is meant to educate. They tend to provide facts and figures to substantiate their claims, and are supposed to present information without any bias. Also, they will most certainly be fired for committing a hate crime and cannot manipulate their way out of it. If they stand in front of the school board like, oh, I was not making fun of black people, I was making fun of Wendy Williams, they might never have a job again. So it's clear that there is someone holding this person accountable, which is the board or the university. Same with writers. At least before social media, their rhetoric is polished, edited, proofread to ensure that the text isn't propagating any harmful sentiments. And publishers are extremely cautious about platforming anything remotely as offensive as Shane Dawson's content. These systems are in place not to restrict free speech, but rather to ensure it, allowing for the censorship of rhetoric that is hateful to the disenfranchised individuals who have had an unfair disadvantage on account of oppression by those in positions of power simply sounds to me like a just system. I might add that this doesn't mean these artists aren't able to ever publish their work. There's still a lot of problematic stuff that gets published, and some of them are by major publishers, and others are by niche ones. Problematic storylines in media, romanticizing mental illness, depiction of race, hate crimes, all get a platform, and we should stop pretending like they don't. Of course, now more than ever, people are starting to call out problematic behavior. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist anymore. Might I add, the oppressors are still benefiting from the positions of power that they previously possessed because Shane Dawson, he's doing just fine. He has a YouTube series, huge fan following, still making stupid content, has never really addressed or properly taken accountability for his inappropriate behavior with minors and animals, along with his perpetration of racism. I'm not saying that Shane Dawson should not have a career, but if this was any other line of work, he wouldn't. The mountains of content that exist as evidence as a record of the concerning behavior Dawson exhibits is insurmountable. The way he has conditioned an entire generation to equate problematic equals edgy equals cool is truly sad. A lot of non-white creators, I'm sure, have a hard time reaching and connecting with a large audience simply because of the biases that people like Dawson perpetrate. And that's unfortunate because a career resurgence for Dawson simply means that it doesn't matter. You can behave inappropriately with minors, animals, and mock people of color all in public and still have a position of power, have a platform, and have a voice. I am not proud to admit, but there was a time when I was Team Elon. This was between 2015 and 2019, and I'm not particularly proud of it. A major reason for it was the branding surrounding him. Elon continues to market himself as though he were a product as opposed to a person. To give him credit where it's due, he succeeded in advertising himself and fabricating this image of a genius that a lot of people have bought, including myself. But if you do even the most surface-level research, you find out that none of it's true. Musk has no achievements other than his ability to create a falsified reality. Founder of PayPal, founder of Tesla, engineer, inventor, and chief designer. Musk is none of those things. He's just a rich man with an inflated ego who thinks he can do anything he wants. The world is his oyster, quite literally. One can only imagine the wealth and power that he wields. The amount of influence he has on public perception is genuinely concerning. People take his word for a lot of things because he's not just a billionaire, inventor, genius, he's also an edgy meme lord. You don't understand. He worked hard for his money. It's not like he was born into it. It's not like he was predisposed to be successful by a society that only allows people who look like him to prosper. It's not like he was born into a rich white family in apartheid South Africa. You guys don't understand. He had to work hard to get where he is today, and he still has time to make original dank memes. He's not like the other billionaires. He's a good billionaire. So that's bullshit. I thought we learned that unchecked power was bad and we needed a democracy where everyone was free to choose and form their opinions and freely express them, knowing that all of them matter and hold the same weight when monarchy didn't work out. But I guess we forgot to take things like disenfranchisement, prejudice, and inequality into account. The systems in place set certain people up to succeed and others to fail. If you're an upper-class white person, you will succeed in a Western society. An upper-class non-white person? Oh, you'll do just fine. Middle class or lower and white? You might have a chance. Middle class or lower and non-white? You better start learning how to do domestic chores. This is the fabric of our society. It's sad but true. There are outliers and exceptions to this, but they are extremely rare. Successful people in any given field in any given country all belong to the same class, religion, and gender that has been in power the longest. If you fail to acknowledge that Elon Musk has had a privileged childhood and has altered the facts to make it seem as though he has broken new ground multiple times, it doesn't take much to get on board the Elon train. And then pop culture starts to further perpetrate the idea that Elon's a revolutionary who's gonna change life as we know it, and happens to be humanity's last hope. If you look it up, there are no real achievements in Elon Musk's life. His empire is not something that he worked hard to build because he isn't a creator. He's a conqueror. He conquers businesses that are built by other people and calls them his own. 10 years down the line, he might even be calling himself the founder of Twitter, and it won't matter whether what he says is true or not because he will be the one running all the media outlets, deciding what can be said and what can't be said. He'll be censoring whoever he pleases and will warp the meaning of free speech to mean whatever he wants it to mean. As of now, Musk has 128.4 million followers on Twitter and is the second most followed person. That is definitely subject to change. I'm pretty sure soon he'll be the most followed person on the website. There's no stopping the Musk train. I hope my arguments before have served as evidence for what I mean by one person wielding too much unchecked power and influence isn't indicative of a democracy, but if it hasn't, allow me to explain once again. Musk pretends as though Tesla is a car company that's environmentally friendly and is the way of the future. It's sustainable, good for the earth. It's what he hopes everyone will one day drive, not because he'll make more money that way. Money? He doesn't care about money. He has money, but because he wants to help the climate crisis, which is why he never tells you that they mine lithium for Teslas, which is bad for the environment, and the only way that they make money is by selling carbon credits to other companies. Also, he overworks his employees and underpays them, doesn't implement basic safety measures in warehouses, causing multiple accidents. Okay, if we could, for a second, ignore all of that. We really shouldn't, but say for the sake of argument, ignore all of that and focus on the net positive Musk has done with his massive platform. We come to the conclusion that, it's zero. If anything, Musk has used his platform and influence only to spread harmful and/or factually incorrect rhetoric. Let's see, like spreading misinformation about the ongoing pandemic and calling it dumb and saying that it will come to a halt by April 2020 and that kids are immune to it. Calling the man who rescued 12 boys and their coach from a Thai cave a pedo guy. And a sad fact, when the guy sued him for defamation, Musk won the case using perhaps the dumbest argument ever. He said, and I quote, calling him a pedo guy was not literal but used to insult him, just like the word motherfucker is used to insult someone but doesn't literally mean that one is having incestuous relations with one's mother. So that's something to chew on. But wait, does that mean that anyone can use that as an insult? Because I'm starting to think that Elon Musk is a real pedo guy. Hey, don't sue me for slander. He said I can say it. He's a pedo guy. The worst part is he hired a private investigator to find dirt on the man so he could use it as a defense, and found nothing. What a complete and utter piece of shit. Elon also tweeted this image. which speaks for itself. His turbulent political relationships, which include him threatening to pull Starlink satellites, offering internet connection in Ukraine after Volodymyr Zelensky very deservedly called him out for meddling in the politics of countries he wasn't well informed about. A lot of his tweeting, which he did to manipulate shareholders and stock prices, have been declared illegal, forcing him to step down as chairman of Tesla. But again, that doesn't seem to mean anything to Musk. When AOC basically summarized the whole Twitter takeover and manipulation of free speech, he didn't disagree or refute her claims. He instead turned it into a joke tweet. It's funny that one man maintains a monopoly on online free speech, where he speaks for the people, by the people, and of the people, when he's had no idea how most people go about their day for his entire life. The same thing happens when a senator says America needs to impose a billionaire tax, because Elon doesn't have any good argument as to why he shouldn't be taxed. He responds with a cheap joke, and people cheer on, as though Elon were this hero that took out the main baddie. There are also tweets like this, which frame the rhetoric to be in his favor, when in fact you don't see any evidence for what these attacks against him actually are. He manipulates the public so blatantly by saying that he's doing this for us. He's fighting for our right. He didn't buy Twitter so he could monopolize thought and ideas as they exist on the marketplace that is Twitter. He bought it because he wanted to save free speech and the public's right to it. And he's the one in the right. And anyone criticizing anything he's ever done, they're in the wrong. And they're attacking him. And by default, they are against free speech. Can I just say that this response from Elon Musk to a hilarious tweet from The Onion only proves that he is not for free speech? He doesn't want anyone to criticize him or hold him accountable, which I understand is a characteristic every human being has. I don't like being criticized either, but if this is to go public, you reserve the right to be critical of my talking points. Elon Musk is a public figure and should learn how to take a joke, especially since he claims to be a super fun and edgy meme lord. Slight tangent. Whenever you have the time, I implore you to read other articles that The Onion has written on Elon Musk. They are all hilarious. These are some of my favorites. I'm not discussing every single thing that Elon Musk has tweeted that has negatively impacted the world because that list is honestly exhaustive. So let's just talk about the main reason why people love to support Elon Musk and his quest for free speech, which is his public display of transphobia. Remember a time when trans people ruled the world and held all the power? Yeah, me neither. Apparently, people like Ricky Gervais, J.K. Rowling, Dave Chappelle, and Elon Musk do. They seem to be doing everything in their power to alienate trans people from society. Oh, but you're gonna say, you just said we have free speech, so they should be able to say whatever they want. Yeah, they should be. And they are allowed to say this. People are allowed to say anything. Kanye West went on InfoWars and denied the Holocaust, and said he admired the most famous genocidal maniac.
I see good things about Hitler also. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
It's not illegal. He hasn't been arrested or held in court for whatever he's saying. You're allowed to say whatever you want, but you have to know that once you say something publicly, people are allowed to criticize it and disagree with it. Hey, that's why we have the like and dislike button, the comment section, because if I'm broadcasting my thoughts and expressing myself to 20 people, 17 of them might disagree with me, 2 might partially agree, and 1 person might completely agree. And that's just how it is. But the thing is, as a person with power and influence, which all of these celebrities possess, there is again a power dynamic that doesn't really represent equality. The reach that Chappelle, Gervais, or Rowling have is something that trans people can only dream of, especially considering that there are so few trans people. And if they're using the platform to send hatred and vitriol towards trans people and stigmatize and mock their existence, then, well, that's an abuse of power, isn't it? Oh, and what's your proposed solution for this? Trans people should work their way up just like these people did and then try to prove them wrong. Yes, because again, society has famously been accepting and encouraging to trans individuals and has always allowed them to succeed by giving them equal, if not more, opportunities than their cisgendered counterparts. Name one trans celebrity who's at least as half as famous as either of these people. You know how I can prove to you that free speech as the conservatives perceive it exists in the West? Woody Allen and Roman Polanski are still making films. Oh, and speaking of people in power who are all for trans rights, David O. Russell is still making films after sexually assaulting his teenage transgendered niece, so that's something. If you're really claiming that the woke lefties are suppressing your free speech, then what do you make of this? People are saying what they want, and people are allowed to criticize it. Cardi B is allowed to make wet-ass P-word, and Ben Shapiro is allowed to criticize it. And we are allowed to criticize Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro is allowed to criticize us. And we are allowed to criticize Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro... As far as I know, Ben Shapiro hasn't done anything illegal, but I disagree with his political ideology. But I think it's not fair to say that he shouldn't have a platform. He should be held accountable for the things he says. He can be mocked and ridiculed for it. He can be countered with facts and figures, or lack thereof, that he provides in his videos.
Wet-ass P-word. Make that pull-out game weak.
A lot of rhetoric that Musk perpetrates could only function as tweets, like pronouns suck, period, end of sentence. Imagine that's all you offer in a conversation, but he never really provides any logic behind what he says. Maybe you need a 1000 IQ to understand the tweet, and I just don't belong to that category. Same with this tweet, suggesting that you're oppressing people by choosing to add he, him in your bio. And lastly, the pièce de résistance, which is his tweet saying pronouns are not good or kind to anyone. Which first, who is being ostracized here? Sounds to me like the person sharing their preferred pronouns is being ostracized. And second, what is the logic for it being unkind and bad? And 3, force is a strong word to use in this context. Let me demonstrate. Hi, my name is Elon. Can you stop forcing your name on me? It is neither good nor kind to anyone. There are a lot of people who are reticent to accept change, and they perceive it to be radical, because either they can't understand it or don't want to. And that's fine, as long as you're not actively endangering people's rights. When you are actively pushing for legislations and promoting regulations which are jeopardizing marginalized groups, how do you not understand that you're in the wrong here? It doesn't escape me that Mr. Musk, a propagator of free speech, on his first month as CEO, restored the Twitter account of famed Robert Pattinson enthusiast Donald Trump and famed Nazi enthusiast Kanye West, and suspended the accounts of various tech journalists for allegedly sharing what he claims are assassination coordinates, which is my favorite phrase to come from this whole debacle. Let's all as a society collectively use it any chance we get. His accusations, much like his achievements, have no basis in reality, and after criticism from almost every lawmaker and internet user, he restored the accounts on the condition that these journalists never share his assassination coordinates again, which, to reiterate, they had not done. This whole fiasco is very ironic considering the mindset of the free speech absolutists, which is basically the boy who cried 1984. Picture this, a multi-billionaire buys a gigantic social media corporation that revolves around discourse and manipulates users and the discourse with his endless influence, censors and or sends hatred towards those who question him, but he's the good one, a real Winston. Can you believe I haven't even mentioned Twitter Blue, simultaneously the worst and the best thing to happen on Twitter since the Musk takeover? I want to say this to whoever made the fake Tesla account. Thank you. I mean this very earnestly from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your service to humanity. Anyway, what a disaster. Who thought that paying for verification would be a good idea? The smartest man in the world, apparently. If you're telling me that this man is humanity's last hope, I'd like you to know that there is no hope for humanity. Apart from all the memes, the ideas that Elon and his fanbase has with Twitter Blue is concerning. And not just because they're treating Twitter like a marketplace. Social media platforms do function as a marketplace, and I think people gained awareness about that during the Facebook data scandal of 2018. We need to be concerned because they seem to create a system that restricts free speech under the guise of enforcing it. I haven't even gotten to the best part of this. Freedom of speech in the country that Twitter is based in, the United States, exists so that people are able to express themselves and exercise their autonomy without being penalized by the government. As much as it might hurt you, social media is not the same, and this discourse needs to be moderated, especially considering that a lot of individuals who use your service aren't even old enough to form their own opinions. Twitter is a private company, and there is no law that states that people can tweet whatever they want. Censorship is very much a thing in America. In fact, a lot of people who demand free speech online want content that has queer people censored or age restricted. Can one not make an argument that you are being anti-free speech? What about the PG-13 rating, or not being able to curse or show graphic violence and sexual content on network television? Can artists not express themselves freely? Aren't they allowed to exercise their autonomy by the government? You can't have it both ways. You can't want free speech online and also want to ban and censor things you find offensive. Help me understand this. You believe in administering free speech, but you suspend the accounts of journalists for doing their job. You suspend accounts or send hate towards people that disagree with you. You prohibit people from posting links to other websites. You implement new policies which reduce credibility of organizations and relegate verification. And you spread rampant misinformation. The worst crime of all? You're just cringe. Your desperate attempts at posting memes and tweets to win over dumb teenage boys is your only real success. Perhaps because you never evolved from being one. Well, that was more or less supposed to be the end of the video essay, which has been in developmental hell for the past coming up on 8 months now, and surprisingly, there have been quite a few developments. Some of them I found to be irrelevant, like the Twitter files, because obviously it was treated like this huge, secretive expose that was supposed to overthrow the establishment. Meanwhile, one of the richest men alive continues to fire employees for questioning his actions. What would one call that kind of behavior? Authoritarian? Autocratic? Tyrannical? Dictatorial? Democratic? There are videos and sources that go into detail explaining how and why the Twitter files are meaningless, one-sided propaganda, and I don't want to waste my energy or time on that. If you're one of those people that believe that this multi-billionaire who's exploiting perhaps everyone online is on the right side, then you're a lost cause. Other developments have caused me to appear and dwell on the subject for longer because I'm making a video on free speech. And if I don't discuss this as it's happening, then I'm missing the crux of what I'm trying to say, which is Elon Musk, wait for it, does not give a flying f*** about free speech. He banned a BBC documentary on the Indian Prime Minister on the website, and when he was questioned about it, said, "I'm not aware about this particular case. India has very strict social media laws. If the choice is between complying with laws or going to jail, I'd rather comply with laws than have any of my people go to jail." Going forward, I know I am treading murky waters and it is ill-advised since the head of the opposition party was charged with defamation for criticizing the prime minister.
In my opinion, Elon's actions and statements regarding this particular issue does not align with the promises he made about offering free speech on the platform that he now owns. If he has, or at any point had the intention to do what he promised, which was allow everybody to say whatever they wanted, including hateful, bigoted things towards all groups of people, why does the very same not extend to a world leader? Is he afraid that he can't stand up for his employees or himself and his company if the Indian government opposes him? Or does he not care that much about free speech and doesn't want to get in trouble with a country which has the third largest percentage of users? You tell me. The next major development that is pertinent to our topic of discussion is what's happening in Turkey. Again, I'm treading murky waters, but unlike some people, I actually care about freedom of speech. So I'm going to continue saying what I want to. The Turkish general elections took place on the 14th of May, which is almost exactly a week before I'm recording this. The president and the man who is also currently running for office is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who has served as the prime minister of the country from 2003 to 2014, and has since served as the president. Twitter blocked tweets from several accounts, and a lot of tweets, said to be at least over 409. That's just an approximate. I'm not sure the public knows much more than that, at least as of now. And this was all initiated by the current president, who has done this in the past, going as far as to block Wikipedia because it didn't give in to his demands. The general consensus around Erdogan as a leader is that he's an authoritarian who wants to be in power as long as he's alive, and did not really care all that much about Turkey or its people during the earthquakes. Again, these are not accusations that I'm making, this is based on rhetoric that I've consumed from media. So all of this is relevant to people in Turkey because that's what free speech is. Free speech is being able to say "fuck you" to a world leader because you can. For a country like America, it is okay to have that conversation because that's very much on the table. You are free to do that. The Trump era was awful, and we collectively as a world are still experiencing the horrific effects that it's had across all sectors. But discourse about the election and being able to communicate freely always was on the table. We know that things are a lot more nuanced, and I could talk about the illusion of free choice and how politics is thrust upon you by a clawing advertiser, but that would be me digressing. If you have a strong opinion about what free speech means at all, if you believe that people should be free to think, to feel, to speak, and to be, you would care what happens outside your fucking echo chamber where sad men who lack healthy father figures laud you as the smartest being in existence. Everything that I've said before this might not matter because if there is anything I want to communicate from this video, it's this. People should always get to choose. The people of Turkey deserve to choose a leader who respects their freedom of thought, their freedom of speech, their freedom of religion, their freedom of choice. If you have a platform that is public and hosts 18.6 million users from a country, the 7th largest user base, and you decide what kind of rhetoric you'd prefer them to see and what you'd hide from them so that you remain on good terms with a powerful world leader, and then you go on the same platform and spew bullshit to delusional people who buy it, I'm not gonna be someone complicit by being silent, and no one should. The people of Turkey have a right to know. I'm aware that Turkey is not considered a complete democracy, which is why a conversation about this is even more important. Elon Musk has enough money to lead a very comfortable life and solve almost every systemic problem plaguing mankind. And yet, he chooses to spend all of his time and money spreading hatred and lies. If that's not concerning to you, I don't know what to say. Discourse is integral. I followed the American elections religiously as they were playing out on Twitter. That was my primary news source. I wasn't tuning in every day to watch CNN, MSNBC, or CBS. I logged onto twitter.com and I watched YouTube videos, and I'm not alone. A whole generation of people consume news through social media. Their minds are not just shaped by their parents, teachers, peers, newspapers, or news anchors. or people in their immediate surroundings. Like I mentioned in previous parts of the video, they're also very much shaped by social media, influencers, or by witnessing discourse of various opinions of people across platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, and TikTok. Twitter has always been the platform where news breaks out. It's where you first find the seeds of commentary. A huge portion of my video essay has just been me putting up pictures of some tweets without too much explanation from people like Cody Johnston or some other user, just so I can use already present information and rhetoric to further illustrate my point. And that's what Twitter or any social media platform does best, even at its worst. It spreads rhetoric. It is important that this rhetoric is fair, balanced, and free, as Musk promises and claims it to be. I hope you understand that when you're paying $8 a month to buy a blue subscription, then you are paying for dog shit. Actually worse, you're paying for lies. You're paying for the empire of a bigoted and narcissistic man who will probably destroy the world with the power that he has. His response to this journalist, which was, it was either have Twitter throttled in its entirety or limit access to a few tweets, and his choice was the latter, considering the greater good of the people. He decided that his sinking social media platform, for which he overpaid, was worth more than actual human lives. Yeah, that sounds about right considering his track record. Look, you might not agree with me politically, you don't have to, that's the thing about free speech, that you get to choose, and if you somehow believe that this multi-billionaire is on your side and cares about free speech, cares about the little man, I've said all I could say to prove that he doesn't. He promised free speech, allowing discourse and creating the most trustworthy and factual news source, and proceeded to throw all of his promises and supposed values out of the window once it actually meant something. Free speech is not being able to say the N-word, or berate trans people, or women, or men, or the whites, or anyone. Free speech is about having a voice, being heard, listening, and voting. Real human lives depend upon promises and policies decided by people in power, people like Erdogan, and people like Musk. The people of Turkey faced earthquakes and awful living conditions, crises, while being under the leadership of an autocrat who silenced anyone who dared to speak against him, removed factual sources that discredited him, removed rhetoric that questioned or criticized his power, and one of the most powerful men in the world, who claimed to be a pariah and savior of free speech, joined him in silencing the common man. We let Elon Musk get away with a lot of things. We let him get away with buying a burning building and adding fuel to the fire and charging people money for staying inside the building. Let's please all not support him anymore? Can we please not? We're being complicit in autocracy somewhat. I know he's doing everything in his power to make sure people stay on the website. He's deleting old accounts so that users who quit continue to log in once a month, just so they don't lose their data from their accounts. This is something that has affected me personally because I disavowed Twitter, the only social media I was on other than YouTube, after Musk took over because I didn't want to support a spoiled multi-billionaire baby. But I tweeted some zingers back in the day, the pre-Musk times, and retweeted a lot of funny tweets that I don't want to lose. It's a dumb policy, and we know exactly why he's doing this. Twitter has been bleeding money for a long time now, and Musk is not the most likable person, so the users are honestly dwindling. Most people on the site now are far right-wing or alt-right people that were banned however many years ago, people banned from all other social media platforms, or crypto bros, and Elon is well aware of that. His current brand and persona is catering to exactly that. Everything he says is to rile people up, and he's just trying to stay relevant through outrage. The worst thing that could happen to Musk is not him being silenced. He loves to play the victim card. The worst thing that could happen to Musk is for him to become irrelevant. He's gonna continue and do anything to stay relevant. He will pander to any community that will accept him. I'm not saying we should stop talking about him, because honestly, we need to talk about him. I mean, he's made sure of that. When we talk about him, we need to hold him accountable. He's not a joke. He's not a pest. He's not Iron Man or the man who will somehow innovate humanity and solve our problems or take us to Mars. His company can't build a functioning rocket, and he spends so much money doing just that. And the carbon emissions from his companies are killing the planet. And again, I'm overcome. He's a corporate fascist. He's a man that will go on TV and say that everything is fine and that you are free to speak and share your thoughts while he makes sure that nobody hears you. There was no winner in the elections on the 14th, although Erdogan led with 4.64%. Neither candidate met the requirements of the minimum 50%. So Turkey will have an election on the 28th, which by the time that you're watching might have decided the fate of Turkey. If the autocrat wins, Elon Musk had a part in that. He has so much money that he cannot put it where his mouth is, and that'll continue to be the case until we do something about it. I'm gonna briefly discuss the Real Time with Bill Maher interview because that happened, and in this video, two of the stupidest, smug assholes talk about the woke mind virus, which, again, not a real thing. Even if it was, it's not the most important thing plaguing humanity. It's just something that's been bothering people with a lot of money because they're not able to, say the things that they want to say out loud, and instead have to say those things privately, which is not a real problem at all. Honestly, compared to what these minority groups that they want to say these things against are facing. But I digress. Again, teachers don't teach properly. Teachers are responsible for the woke mind virus. They aren't apparently supposed to say that George Washington was a slave owner, which he was. There are other people throughout history that we can place on a pedestal, rather than people who did things but also happened to be racist or bigots. There is a lot to learn from people in history who did good things but also happened to be really bad people. You can learn, for instance, that you don't have to, respect someone just because they ruled over a piece of land way back when. It doesn't matter. There are other people. You could look up people like Irina Sandler or Anne Frank or someone who doesn't really have a documented history of bigotry and recognize that, oh, these people were historical figures that went through difficulty and still try to do better than what people during their time were doing. People that were the status quo. Another thing that I noticed about the interview was Bill Maher and Elon Musk just laughing about slavery and trying to say that it's okay because everybody used to do it. They're basically trying to justify it, and they're like, yeah, it was a bad institution, but people all over the world did it, and they had slaves of different races, were slaves. It wasn't just black people, which, yeah, technically true, but you're talking about George Washington in particular, which he had black slaves. And these slaves came to this land because of the transatlantic slave trade. And that was very much because of racism and discrimination and hatred towards black people and this perception that they were less than and only suited for physical and menial chores, that they actually couldn't think for themselves. And obviously now we know that that is false, and if anything, the reason that black people are falling behind is because of the systematic ramifications of the slave trade and discrimination and laws and regulations that have prevented from, again, functioning in a society that was not designed for them. The only reason you see them falling short of things is because it's not an equal society for them, and I feel like the Trump era just put everything under a magnifying glass, and people realize that more. But I guess the other side effect of that was this increase in far-right extremism, and led to people with centrist or moderate right-wing views to cross over to the far-right end. And you can't justify slavery or any such institution that existed in history by saying that, oh yeah, it was the common thing that was prevalent at the time, because your kids should not exactly be learning that it's okay because it's justified, because that was, the common thing then. That's something that they come to understand as adults. You don't justify people's behaviors while teaching them history. You don't say, well, these Nazis, they did round up people out of the concentration camps and gas them, but that was the common thing at the time for the Germans to do. So it's not that big of a deal. It was a common thing at the time. That's bad logic. That's just wrong. Anyway, there's also a funny part in the interview where Bill Maher is just framing Elon Musk as this likable guy who is powerful and is using his power and platform for good instead of evil. He's just like, I'm so glad you're around. You have so much power and influence, and you're using all of it for good instead of evil. And Elon does this fake, awkward laugh kind of thing where he's like, yeah, sure, that's what I'm doing. And that was just funny because we know that he's not doing it for good. I mean, objectively, can we just say that what Elon Musk is doing just not good, man? It's just not good objectively. I mean, he's just this power-hungry, rich overlord who's sitting on this diamond, gold, platinum throne, and he's telling people that there is transparency when there clearly isn't, and he's manipulating people and feeding us lies and allowing for rampant hatred to exist on this platform that he owns and is responsible for. There were various instances of him displaying anti-Semitism towards fellow billionaire George Soros, who happens to be a liberal and decided to pull from his share of Tesla stocks, which, good for him, never know when that thing's gonna crash, like every other thing that Elon Musk builds, his company builds, but, good for him. Don't know enough about Soros for me to, add further commentary, but I wanted to also add that Elon Musk took over Twitter and fired over half the employees and then decided to overwork the ones that he didn't fire. And most of the people that he fired turned out to be Americans, and the ones that he didn't fire turned out to be immigrants with H-1B visas, and their only option was either quit and try to find a job within 60 days or get deported. So that's not great. And also, he called work from home morally wrong and has fired any employee that, has to work from home due to either medical reasons or whatever, which proves that Elon Musk doesn't understand what terms are and he's too stupid to look them up, because work from home is not morally wrong. Murder is morally wrong and might just not be his philosophy, but a lot of people who are disabled or have severe phobias or mental illnesses cannot function in any other environment except their home, so they have to work from home. Elon Musk doesn't care about underprivileged people. What else is new? Elon Musk had sent out a poll quite a few months back, I believe, asking if he should step down as CEO of Twitter, and the poll said yes, but he didn't do anything about it up until last week, I believe, where he said that he wants Linda Yaccarino to replace him. She's gonna take over as CEO of Twitter. She's apparently a Trump supporter and a right-wing person, but for some reason, everybody turned on Elon Musk after that, saying, he is bad and evil because she's a woman and woke for some reason, which there's no proof of that. Everybody's denounce your woke ties and quit. What are you doing? Elon, why are you appointing a woman? Everything's gonna go to hell because women famously can't do things. So good for her, probably gonna have a short tenure because the Bird app is going to crash and die. Let's hope. I also wanted to add that Musk's transphobia seems to be a result of his trans daughter cutting ties with him and changing her name so as to not have his last name. More power to her. And no, Elon, it's not communism, it's probably you. I'm going to pivot to the silly outro that's a little too old. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're someone who is interested in what I have to offer or say about this crazy world we're living in, let me know. However, comments or by subscribing. I'll take another 7 months to research, write, film, edit, and upload it, but that just means that it's more exclusive somehow. I don't know if anyone's going to watch this, but if it gets to 1K views, I'll make another video about something a little lighthearted, probably. Maybe about Hollywood. Oh, also, before I leave, Elon Musk has a sexual assault allegation, which he's addressed in a tweet, but that's so dismissive, and I don't know. All I'm saying is that it exists. So if you didn't know that before, do with that information what you will. Let's not forget that he's pictured with convicted child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, I swear I'm done. Conclusion now. In conclusion, don't use Twitter. I wish it were as simple as that. It kind of is. Don't use any social media and your life will be better, but if you do choose to be on here, maybe learn how to understand nuance, because you'll need that to navigate, and try not to commit any hate crimes or besmirch people who can't defend themselves. I don't know how to moderate my time on the internet, so I can't advise people on how to do so. That would be as legitimate as Elon Musk giving advice on how to interact with working-class transgendered people. If anyone has somehow figured out how to use the internet and stay sane at the same time, please let me know. Don't forget, billionaires are a threat to the fabric of democracy, and Elon Musk is a pedo guy. So I don't know, man. Subscribe, comment, share. Do the things that you're supposed to do. Support my channel. Okay, bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the richest man in the world.